The day I proposed to Rachel Turner in Central Park, surrounded by city lights and the soft hum of New York at dusk, I thought I had everything figured out. 5 years of building what I believed was an unshakable foundation. Sunday morning. Breakfasts with fresh coffee and the crossword puzzle, planning our dream home in the suburbs, discussing how many children we wanted. 2, we'd decided. A boy and a girl, preferably. My name is Daniel Mercer, and I'm a project manager by trade and temperament. My colleagues joke that I can organize chaos into spreadsheets, and my friends know me as the reliable one, the guy who's always on time, who remembers birthdays, who plans vacations down to the hour. I value precision, loyalty, consistency. Rachel was none of these things when we met at a mutual friend's gallery opening. She was magnetic, wild auburn hair, green eyes that crinkled when she laughed, a spontaneity that both terrified and fascinated. Me. She moved through life like she was dancing, while I marched in straight lines. "You're different," she'd said that first night, her finger tracing the rim of her wine glass. "Most guys try too hard to impress me. You just are." That was Rachel. Direct, refreshing, seemingly genuine. She was the creative director at an advertising firm, the kind of woman who usually attracted charismatic men with fast cars and faster promises. Yet somehow, she seemed to genuinely appreciate my dependable nature. "You're my rock," became her favorite phrase, whispered against my neck as we fell asleep. I believed her. I believed in us. Our relationship progressed through all the expected milestones, meeting families, her parents, wealthy and somewhat distant, her younger sister Emma, who looked at Rachel with a mixture of admiration and resentment. My mother loved her immediately. My father took longer but eventually warmed to her infectious laugh. Moving in together after 18 months felt natural. Her colorful chaos of art books and vintage record collections somehow complemented my organized minimalism. We balanced each other, her spontaneity pulling me out of my comfortable routines, my stability giving her a foundation she claimed she'd always needed. "You ground me," she'd say, and I'd feel 10 feet tall. When I proposed, her yes came with tears that seemed to validate every choice I'd ever made. We were perfect on paper, successful professionals in our early 30s, financially stable, emotionally mature, ready for the next chapter. The ring, a 2-carat emerald-cut diamond, with side baguettes, looked stunning on her slender finger. I'd spent 3 months selecting it, just as I'd spent 3 months planning the proposal. That was me, methodical, thorough. Rachel used to tease me about my planning, but she'd always add, "Never change, Daniel. I need your steadiness." Now, with our wedding just 1 week away, I find myself staring at our engagement photos on the mantel, wondering if I ever really knew her at all. The warning signs had been there, of course. I see that now. The text messages at odd hours that she'd quickly dismiss with vague explanations. "Just work stuff," she'd say, angling the phone away from me. The occasional unexplained absences, hair appointments that left her hair looking exactly the same, shopping trips that yielded no purchases. Then there was her strange hesitation whenever Mark's name came up in conversation. Mark Lawson, the ex-boyfriend she'd dated for nearly 3 years before me. The one who'd broken her heart, but remained tangentially in our social circle through mutual friends. "Ancient history," she'd say dismissively, but I'd notice how her voice would pitch slightly higher, how her fingers would suddenly become busy with something, rearranging cushions, twirling her hair, checking her phone. I ignored these moments, cataloging them as insignificant anomalies in an otherwise perfect relationship. Rachel was just stressed about the wedding, I told myself. 300 guests, a historic venue overlooking the harbor, a reception that her parents had insisted on upgrading to showcase their daughter to Boston's social elite. If I had known that the happiest day of my life was about to become my greatest weapon, I might have paid more attention to the warning signs, the late-night texts, her sudden work emergencies, and the way she would tense whenever I touched her phone. But I was too busy planning our perfect future to notice she was already living a double life. The first time I consciously registered something was wrong came exactly 12 days before our wedding. Rachel had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she showered, and a notification popped up, an email confirmation for a hotel downtown, booked for the previous Tuesday night. I stared at it, coffee mug halfway to my lips. Tuesday. The night she'd supposedly stayed at her sister Emma's place after a late dinner, claiming it made more sense than driving across town. I'd called her at 11 p.m. and she'd answered with a whispered, "Emma just fell asleep on the couch. I don't want to wake her." I closed the laptop and placed my mug in the sink, the coffee suddenly bitter on my tongue. That evening, I casually mentioned that I'd bumped into Emma at the coffee shop near my office. "How was your dinner with her last Tuesday?" I asked, watching Rachel's face carefully. She didn't miss a beat. "Great. We went to that new Italian place she's been wanting to try," she responded confidently. "She had too much Chianti, which is why we crashed at her place." I nodded, something cold settling in my chest. Emma and I hadn't actually crossed paths. I'd made it up. And now Rachel had elaborated on a dinner that never happened, with details that existed only in her imagination. From that moment, I began noticing everything. The way she angled her body away from me when texting, how she'd started taking calls in another room or on the balcony, the mysterious wedding errands that kept her out for hours with little to show for it. Just confirming details with vendors, she'd say breezily when I asked. But when I mentioned to her best friend Melissa that Rachel had spent 3 hours with the florist on Wednesday, Melissa looked confused. "That's weird. The florist called me on Wednesday because she couldn't reach Rachel to confirm the final arrangement for the head table," she remarked with a puzzled expression. These inconsistencies piled up like snowflakes, at first barely noticeable, then accumulating into something I couldn't ignore. Finding an unfamiliar receipt for 2 whiskeys at a hotel bar on a night she claimed to be at a bridal fitting. Hearing her laugh softly into her phone at 2 a.m. in our bathroom, the shower running to muffle her voice. Her wedding ring finger suddenly bare because it was getting resized again for the 3rd time in 2 months. I began keeping a mental log of these discrepancies, my project manager mind unable to stop cataloging the data points that increasingly suggested a painful pattern. Yet even as evidence mounted, I struggled to believe the worst. This was Rachel, my Rachel, who had cried in my arms after her grandfather's funeral, who knew exactly how I took my coffee, who had spent Christmas Eve helping me assemble care. Packages for a homeless shelter? "I think you're being paranoid," my best friend Jason said when I confided in him over beers. "Everyone gets weird before their wedding. Cold feet, stress, whatever. Doesn't mean she's cheating. Then why lie about where she was?" I pressed, leaning forward. Jason shrugged. "Maybe she just needed space and didn't want to hurt your feelings. Wedding planning is intense, especially with her parents involved," he suggested, taking a sip of his beer. I wanted to believe him. The alternative was too painful to consider. But 4 days before the wedding, it happened. Rachel was in the shower after returning late from what she'd called final dress alterations. Her phone, left charging on the nightstand, lit up with a text notification. I hadn't planned to look. I'm not that person, or at least I wasn't then. But the preview was visible from where I stood folding laundry. "Mark, can't wait for Wednesday. Our special place. Last chance before the big day." I felt it like a physical blow, a hollowing out of my chest, a bitter taste flooding my mouth. Wednesday, 2 days before our rehearsal dinner. Our special place, last chance. The implications were unambiguous. The shower continued to run as I stood frozen, staring at her phone until the screen went dark again. When Rachel emerged wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, I had composed my face into what I hoped was neutral expression. "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing me standing still with a half-folded shirt in my hands. "Fine," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just thinking about the honeymoon. I can't wait to have you all to myself for 2 weeks." She smiled. that radiant, seemingly genuine smile that had captivated me for 5 years, and kissed my cheek. "Me too, babe. It's going to be perfect," she murmured softly. As she dressed for bed, humming softly to herself, I watched her with new eyes. Who was this woman? This stranger wearing Rachel's face, sleeping in Rachel's spot beside me, planning to become Rachel. Mercer in less than a week while exchanging secret messages with her ex-boyfriend? I lay awake long after her breathing had deepened into sleep, my mind racing through possibilities, scenarios, explanations that might somehow make this something other than what it seemed. But as the hours passed, one thought crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. If Rachel was betraying me, I wouldn't just walk away. I would make sure she remembered the consequences of her actions for the rest of her life. But first, I needed irrefutable proof. Morning arrived after a sleepless night, bringing with it a strange clarity. I kissed Rachel goodbye as she left for breakfast with the bridesmaids, then immediately opened my laptop. 5 days until our wedding. 5 days to uncover the truth. As white. A project manager, I approach problems methodically, identify objectives, gather data, analyze patterns, implement solutions. Why should this be any different? I created a new spreadsheet titled Wedding Vendor Contacts in case Rachel ever checked my computer. Inside was a timeline of her suspicious behavior over the past 3 months, dates, times, claimed locations versus confirmed locations, unexplained absences, and patterns in behavior. First, I checked our joint credit card statements. Rachel had her own card, but we shared one for household expenses. The transactions told a story. Small charges at coffee shops when she was supposedly elsewhere, a gas station on the opposite side of town from her claimed destination, a boutique, hotel bar appearing multiple times, always on Tuesday evenings. I searched her name in my email, finding the receipt for the engagement ring. The jeweler had sent a follow-up about resizing, but just once, not the 3 times Rachel had claimed. Her ring wasn't being resized. She was removing it for someone else. With hands that shook slightly, I ordered a GPS tracker online with overnight delivery. I told myself this was for certainty, not revenge, that I needed to know beyond doubt before confronting her. The small device arrived the next morning while Rachel was at a venue walkthrough. I installed it under the rear bumper of her Audi, disguising my actions as checking tire pressure. A wedding present, I muttered to myself bitterly. Next, I reviewed our home security footage. We'd installed cameras after a break-in next door last year, one covering the front door, another the driveway. The footage revealed Rachel leaving at times that contradicted her stories, returning later than claimed, and once, most damning, Mark Lawson dropping her off 2 blocks from our house at 1 a.m. when she was supposedly at a girls' night. Each discovery was a fresh wound, but I forced myself to document everything with clinical detachment. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about evidence. The GPS tracker proved invaluable that very afternoon. Rachel had told me she was meeting her wedding planner at 2 p.m. At 2:15, I checked the tracker's app and watched as her car traveled not to the wedding planner's office, but to an upscale apartment complex in the North End. I knew that building. 3 months earlier, at a dinner party, someone had mentioned that Mark had purchased a condo there after his promotion. I sat in my home office watching the pulsing dot of the tracker remain stationary at that location for 3 hours. When she returned home at 6 p.m., she breezed in with a folder of final seating arrangements and the scent of unfamiliar cologne. Traffic was a nightmare, she offered without prompting, kissing my cheek. "How was your day?" "Productive," I replied, truthfully maintaining my composure. That night, I faced my most difficult decision. I needed an ally, someone close to Rachel who might know the extent of her deception. Someone I could trust with my suspicions without risking exposure. Claire Peterson seemed the obvious choice. Rachel's friend from college, she'd always been. Kind to me, but maintained a certain reserve around us as a couple. Recently, that reserve had shifted to something like discomfort. I texted her, "Need to talk about something important. Coffee tomorrow? Just you and me." Her response came quickly. I've been expecting this. Toucan Cafe, 10 a.m. The certainty in her message confirmed my worst fears. Claire knew something. I arrived at the cafe 20 minutes early, rehearsing what to say, how to ask, without revealing how much I already knew. The coffee grew cold in front of me as I waited, scenarios racing through my mind. Would Claire defend Rachel, warn her, or confirm what the evidence already suggested? At precisely 10 a.m., the cafe door opened. Claire walked in, her expression grave as she spotted me. She approached slowly, clutching her purse like a shield. "Daniel," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Her eyes couldn't meet mine. "There's something you need to see. And after you do, you'll have to decide what kind of man you really are, the kind who walks away or the kind who makes sure everyone sees the truth." Claire's hands trembled as she reached into her purse. "I've been torturing myself about this for weeks," she said, her voice barely audible above the cafe's ambient noise. "Wondering if I should tell you, if it's my place to get involved." She placed a USB drive on the table between us. It looked innocuous. Just a small black rectangle that somehow contained the power to destroy everything. 3 weeks ago, I went to Toronto for a marketing conference, Claire began, finally meeting my eyes. Rachel asked if she could use my house while I was gone. Said she needed space to work on her vows, away from distractions. She laughed bitterly. I was actually touched that she felt my home was a sanctuary. I stared at the USB drive, already knowing what it contained. "I have a security system," Claire continued, wrapping her hands around her untouched coffee mug. "Cameras in the living room, kitchen, hallway. I installed it after the break-in last year. It uploads footage to cloud storage automatically." She took a deep breath. When I got back and checked the footage to make sure everything was okay, I saw them. Rachel and Mark. Not just once. 3 separate days. My throat constricted. "In your house?" I asked, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Claire nodded, her expression pained. "The things they said to each other, Daniel. The plans they made. It wasn't just physical. They've been seeing each other for months. Mark was never just an old friend like Rachel claimed," she explained, her voice catching. I reached for the USB drive, but Claire placed her hand over mine. "Before you watch it, you need to know I'm not doing this out of malice. Rachel's been my friend for 12 years. But what she's doing to you?" She shook her head. "No one deserves that level of deception, especially not someone about to make a lifetime commitment," she added firmly. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice hollow. I tried to talk to her first, told her she needed to come clean, or call off the wedding. She swore it was ending, that the thing with Mark was a mistake, that she truly loves you, Claire explained, her eyes filling with tears. "But yesterday I saw them together again. At that little Italian place you 3 used to go to, ironically enough. They weren't even trying to hide." I slipped the USB drive into my pocket, feeling its weight like a stone. "Thank you," I said, simply. "What will you do?" Claire asked, concern evident in her voice. I considered the question carefully. "Something appropriate," I answered, my mind already working through possibilities. That night, after Rachel had gone to bed claiming a headache, I took my laptop to the guest room and inserted the USB drive. For several minutes, I sat staring at the folder of video files, each labeled with dates from the previous month. With a deep breath, I clicked on the first one. The footage was high definition, the timestamp clear, 1:17 p.m., exactly when Rachel had told me she was meeting her mother for lunch. Claire's living room came into view, and then Rachel, entering with Mark close behind her. They were laughing, his hand already sliding beneath her shirt as she pushed him toward the couch. "We should have time." Rachel's voice came through clearly. "Daniel thinks I'm with my mother until 4. "Your fiancé is so trusting," Mark replied, his tone mocking. "It's almost too easy." What followed made me physically ill. Not just the intimacy, though seeing Rachel with another man was excruciating, but the casual way they discussed me afterward. My methodical nature that Rachel apparently found suffocating. My careful planning that was boring but useful because it made me predictable. "One more week of freedom," Mark said at one point, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Then you'll be Mrs. Mercer," Rachel laughed. "On paper," she responded with a dismissive flick of her hand. I forced myself to watch all 3 videos. Each featured similar scenarios on different days, all when Rachel had claimed to be elsewhere. The most recent was from just 4 days ago, after I'd begun my investigation, but before I'd confirmed my suspicions. As the final video ended, I closed my laptop and sat in the darkness. The physical pain was surprising, a hollow ache in my chest, nausea rising in my throat, a cold sweat breaking across my forehead. This wasn't just betrayal, it was mockery, contempt, a systematic campaign of lies from the woman I had believed would be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children. Moved through the stages of grief in accelerated succession. Denial crumbled in the face of irrefutable evidence. Anger flared white-hot, then settled into something colder, more focused. Bargaining seemed pointless. What was there to salvage? Depression hovered at the edges, but something else was taking center stage, a calculated determination. Rather than confront Rachel immediately, I made a decision that surprised even me. The wedding would proceed as planned, with one significant modification. I spent the next hours outlining my response with the same methodical attention I gave to professional projects. First, I backed up Claire's videos to multiple secure locations. Then I created a new email account and contacted our wedding venue's audio-visual coordinator, explaining that I wanted to surprise Rachel with a special video presentation during the reception. "Something meaningful," I wrote, "a tribute to our journey together." By morning, I had the framework of a plan. When Rachel kissed me goodbye on her way to her final dress fitting, I noticed for the first time how easily the lies fell from her lips, how convincing her performance remained even now, days before our wedding. I spent that day securing allies, not by revealing the full truth, but by ensuring key people would assist with my surprise. The venue's AV technician was eager to help with what he believed was a romantic gesture. My best man, Jason, agreed to introduce the video at a specific moment. I even arranged for the photographer to capture reactions from a particular angle. The final component was editing the video itself, splicing together our happiest moments with the damning evidence of Rachel's betrayal. I worked through the night, selecting clips that would show the starkest contrast between the woman I thought I knew and the one captured on Claire's security footage. The evening before our wedding, Rachel returned from her bachelorette dinner, slightly tipsy and affectionate. As she kissed me deeply in our hallway, I wondered if she'd been with Mark earlier, if these same lips had touched his just hours before. "One more day," she whispered against my mouth. "I can't wait to be your wife," I smiled, the calm I felt both terrifying and liberating. "It's going to be a day no one will ever forget," I promised quietly. As I laid out my suit for tomorrow's ceremony, I felt an eerie calm replace my rage. Rachel would walk down the aisle believing she had successfully deceived me, never suspecting that I had transformed our wedding from a celebration of love into a public execution of her lies. Tomorrow, instead of saying "I do," I would ensure that everyone would know exactly what she had done. The morning of what should have been the happiest day of my life dawned with perfect clarity. Blue skies, moderate temperature, gentle breeze. Weather fit for a fairy tale wedding. I stood at our bedroom window watching the sunrise while Rachel slept peacefully, her expression serene, unburdened by conscience. For a brief moment, looking at her there, auburn hair spread across the pillow, lips slightly parted in sleep, I hesitated. Was I really going through with this? Wouldn't it be simpler to confront her privately, call off the wedding, walk away with dignity? But then she stirred, reached for her phone before even fully awake, and thumbed out a quick text with a small smile playing at her lips. I knew exactly who was receiving that message. My resolve solidified. The hours that followed passed in a surreal procession. breakfast with my groomsmen at Jason's house, where I maintained a convincing facade of pre-wedding excitement. The professional photographer capturing getting-ready moments as we donned tuxedos and attached boutonnieres. The drive to the historic harbor venue where 300 guests were already gathering. "You look calm," Jason remarked as we stood in the preparation room. "I'd be a nervous wreck." "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied truthfully, straightening my tie. I moved through the pre-ceremony rituals like an actor hitting his marks, shaking hands with Rachel's father, a stern man who had always treated me with reserved approval, hugging my tearful mother, standing at the altar as the string quartet played Pachelbel's canon. And then Rachel appeared at the end of the aisle, a vision in white lace and silk, her arm linked with her father's. A collective murmur of appreciation rippled through the gathering. She was beautiful, objectively, undeniably so. Her eyes locked with mine as she processed forward, and I saw tears gathering there, threatening to spill onto her perfectly made-up face. I studied her with detached fascination. How skilled she was at this performance, the blushing bride, overcome with emotion at the sight of her soon-to-be husband. I wondered idly if she'd practiced these expressions in the mirror, or if deception simply came naturally to her after months of living a double life. The ceremony proceeded according to script. We exchanged meaningful glances, spoke our rehearsed words. I noted with clinical interest how steady her hands were as we exchanged rings, how convincingly her voice broke when she promised to be faithful. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant finally announced with a warm smile. As I leaned in for the kiss that would seal our union, I whispered against her lips, "You look beautiful today." She did. That wasn't a lie. The reception venue, a glass-enclosed pavilion overlooking the harbor, was stunning. White orchids cascaded from crystal vases. Champagne flowed freely. Our first dance went flawlessly, Rachel following my lead as we moved across the floor to our song, the one that had been playing the night we met. "I love you so much," she whispered against my collar as we swayed to the music. "I know exactly how much you love me," I replied, and she mistook my meaning for romantic rather than ironic. I watched her work the room afterward, embracing college friends, laughing with colleagues, accepting congratulations with practiced grace. Mark was there, of course. Rachel had insisted on inviting him, claiming they had too many mutual friends to exclude him without raising questions. He stood near the bar, handsome in his tailored suit, occasionally catching Rachel's eye across the room. To anyone else, these glances might have seemed casual, inconsequential. To me, they were confirmation of everything I already knew. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. My father spoke about commitment and honor, ironically enough. Rachel's mother reminisced about her daughter's innate goodness. Jason delivered a best man speech filled with humorous anecdotes and sincere wishes for our happiness. Finally, the moment arrived. The venue lights dimmed slightly as Jason returned to the microphone. "And now," he announced with a wide smile, "Daniel has prepared a special surprise for his bride. A journey through their relationship that I'm told will bring us all to tears." Rachel turned to me, genuine surprise and delight on her face. "You didn't tell me about this?" she whispered, squeezing my hand. "I wanted it to be a surprise," I replied, standing to address our guests. "Before we show this video, I want to say a few words about truth and memory." The room quieted, all eyes on me. When we look back on our lives, the moments that define us aren't always the ones we expect. Sometimes they're moments of revelation, when what we thought was true is revealed to be false, when what we believed was love turns out to be something else entirely, I stated, my voice steady and clear. I paused, noticing Rachel's slight frown, the first hint of unease crossing her features. This video chronicles our journey together, the memories we've created and the truths I've discovered along the way. It's a testament to the power of evidence and the importance of seeing clearly what's right in front of you, I continued, making deliberate eye contact with key guests. I nodded to the AV technician who had become my unwitting accomplice. The lights dimmed further, and the projection screen descended from the ceiling. The video began innocently enough. Photos of Rachel and me at the beginning of our relationship, video clips from vacations, our engagement. Rachel relaxed beside me, her momentary concern fading as the familiar images played. The assembled guests made appreciative sounds, laughed at the appropriate moments, sighed at the romantic scenes. Then, without warning, the footage cut to Claire's living room. Rachel and Mark entered the frame, his hands already on her body, her laughter echoing through the venue's speaker system. "We should have time," Rachel's voice rang out clearly. "Daniel thinks I'm with my mother until 4. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Rachel froze beside me, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers, shattering on the floor. I didn't move to help her. On screen, the betrayal continued to unfold in explicit detail, interspersed with timestamps that corresponded to days I could identify. Our anniversary, the day after my birthday, 3 days after our engagement party, 1. "More week of freedom," Mark said on screen, his voice echoing through the silent hall. "On paper," Rachel replied with a laugh that now sounded hollow and cruel. The silence in the reception hall was absolute, except for the audio from the video, and the sound of Rachel's mother beginning to sob. From the corner of my eye, I saw Mark backing toward the exit, only to find his path blocked by several of my larger friends who had been discreetly positioned there according to my instructions. Rachel turned to me, her face drained of color, eyes wide with horror. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Daniel, please stop this. Please." I met her gaze steadily. "Why would I stop the truth, Rachel?" I asked quietly. The video continued for exactly 3 minutes, long enough to remove any doubt, to make the betrayal undeniable and public. When the screen finally went black, I stood and took the microphone once more. "I want to thank you all for coming today," I said, my voice steady and controlled. "Unfortunately, there will be no wedding. What you've just witnessed is evidence of an ongoing affair between my fiancée Rachel Turner and her ex-boyfriend Mark Lawson, an affair that continued right up until yesterday." Rachel was openly sobbing now, mascara tracking down her cheeks in black rivers. Her father had risen from his seat, his face contorted with rage, though I couldn't tell if it was directed at his daughter, at Mark, or at me for the public humiliation. "The venue is paid for until midnight," I continued calmly. "The bar is open. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll be returning the gifts, of course." I placed the microphone on the table and turned to Rachel one last time. "Goodbye, Rachel," I said quietly, removing my wedding ring and placing it beside her plate. I hope he was worth it. Without another word, I walked out of the reception hall, leaving chaos in my wake. I could hear Rachel's sobbing, her mother's wailing, her father's, enraged shouting at Mark, who was attempting to defend himself. As the doors closed behind me, the sounds of chaos faded. I had planned this moment for days, anticipated the satisfaction, but nothing prepared me for the lightness I felt walking away from that room of shattered illusions. I had lost a fiancé, but reclaimed my dignity, and as I loosened my tie in the evening air, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was a liberation. 6 months after the wedding, that wasn't. I stand at the window of my new apartment, overlooking a different part of the city. The view isn't as spectacular as the one Rachel and I had from our old place, but I find I prefer it. No memories here, no ghosts of laughter or promises that turned out to be lies. The aftermath of my public revelation was far-reaching and, in some cases, more severe than I had anticipated. The video, despite my efforts to contain it, found its way onto phones and eventually social media. Within days, Rachel's humiliation had transcended our social circle and become fodder for local gossip. Her advertising firm, which prided itself on its family values branding, quietly asked for her resignation. Clients, it seemed, were uncomfortable working with someone whose judgment and integrity had been so publicly compromised. She tried to fight it initially, even suggested the video had been manipulated, but the evidence was too clear, the timestamps too specific. Her parents' reaction surprised even me. Their social standing had always been paramount, and Rachel's actions, and my method of exposing them, had made them objects of pity and whispered conversations at the country club. Her father, a man of rigid propriety and volcanic temper, tracked down Mark at his office 2 weeks after the wedding. The altercation that followed sent Mark to the emergency room with a broken nose and fractured orbital bone, and sent Richard Turner to the police station on assault charges. The case was later settled out of court, but the damage to the Turner family's reputation was irreparable. Mark didn't fare much better. The video reached his workplace, where he was apparently involved with another colleague despite his relationship with Rachel. The resulting HR investigation revealed a pattern of inappropriate relationships with coworkers. He was terminated within a month. As for Rachel, she eventually moved to Chicago, according to Claire, who remains one of the few mutual friends still in contact with both of us. She couldn't walk down the street here without people recognizing her, Claire explained over coffee last month. The video followed her everywhere. I don't take satisfaction in Rachel's continuing struggles. That surprises people when I admit it, but it's true. The revenge was complete the moment I walked out of that reception hall. Everything that followed was simply consequence, not intention. Our friend group fractured along predictable lines. Some thought my public exposure went too far, that I should have confronted Rachel privately, ended things with dignity rather than orchestration. Others felt she had received exactly what she deserved. At Jason's wedding last month, where I was pointedly not asked to be best man, the division was still evident in who sat where, who spoke to whom. The practical aspects of untangling our lives took months. Returning wedding gifts with brief, dignified notes of explanation. Selling the house we had purchased together in anticipation of starting a family. Dividing furniture, kitchenware, the 1,000 small things that accumulate in 5 years of shared life. I kept her engagement ring, not as a memento, but because it represented a significant investment. I sold it eventually to a dealer in another state, using the money to fund a trip to New Zealand, somewhere Rachel and I had never discussed visiting, somewhere I could create memories that belonged only to me. The strangest part of recovery was rediscovering myself as an individual. After 5 years of Daniel and Rachel, I had forgotten parts of myself, interests I'd set aside to accommodate her preferences, friendships I'd neglected because she found certain people boring, quiet pleasures like reading military history or hiking alone that she'd subtly discouraged. I started therapy 3 months after the wedding, not because I was devastated by losing Rachel. That pain had been processed through my methodical investigation and public revelation, but because I needed to understand why I had ignored so many warning signs. Why I, a man who built his career on attention to detail, had been so willfully blind when it came to the woman I loved. We see what we want to see, my therapist suggested during one of our sessions. And you wanted to see the perfect partner, the perfect future. She was right. I had been as invested in the illusion as Rachel, just for different reasons. Claire and I have grown closer, though not romantically. Her willingness to tell me the truth, despite her long friendship with Rachel, revealed a moral courage I deeply respect. We meet for coffee every few weeks, carefully avoiding postmortems on my relationship, but finding genuine connection in shared interests and compatible perspectives. Recently, I met someone new, Allison, a civil engineer who approaches life with the same analytical precision I do. It's not romance yet, just coffee dates and conversations about books we've both read, but there's potential there. A foundation of honesty, at least. The most valuable lesson from all of this wasn't about betrayal or revenge, but about authenticity. I spent 5 years with a woman who was performing a role, the devoted fiancé who secretly chafed at my stability while exploiting it. Now I'm learning to recognize the difference between performance and presence, between someone who wants to be seen and someone who wants to be chosen. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but what no one tells you is what comes after. The Quiet mornings when the rage has burned away and you're left with just yourself. I don't regret exposing Rachel's betrayal. I regret only that I nearly married someone who never truly existed except in my imagination. The truth, however painful, set us both free. Me from a lifetime of lies, and her from the facade she could no longer maintain. And in that freedom, despite everything, I found something I hadn't expected: peace. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.